I just figure she has the value, and I'm going to go that direction.
Yeah, this is a filly that, when we first got into the sport, you might not have thought about because we thought a lot about class back in those days. And, you wanted to be tested against the better horses. We didn't have this as sophisticated FIG system as we do now. Nowadays, you look at Funk, who's gotten very good, very sharp, and there's no real visible way. It's not like they took on or took off blinkers or anything like that.
For sure.
She just has gotten good. But I did go with Waving By. To me, she was kind of a clear choice in here. Did, as you mentioned, beat the same exact level last time, and they're not machines. And, in the past I've kind of been reluctant to take horses winning race after race. There can only be so many cigars out there, but I'm going to take her anyway in here. I think Azunia is pretty interesting, too. Her last race here, opening weekend, could not have been an easier win. She was very handy that day, and the horses that she beat, Olivia's Race Day and More Than Shaken, came back to run 1-2 yesterday.
Yeah, and in this field, there's very few fillies that have ever passed a horse in this race. So that could make it a little more interesting because they're all the fillies that are left in here are all front runners.
Yeah. Yeah, when they never show an ability to pass each other, but then they all get together, you kind of wonder what's going to break.
Right.
Second race, no scratches, non-winners of 2, Texas bred filly allowance runners here going 6 furlongs.
Yeah, and I got Diamonds and Aces, the 4-horse in here, and I made her to 2-1 favorite. There are things, obviously, if you want to try to beat her. I mean, I totally get it. She is 1 for 15 in her career, but very consistent, always right there. Last time at a similar level, 2 starts at Houston, finished second. That was a really good race. The winner, Reclusive, came back, not only won, but improved her buyer figure by 6 points. They tried 2 turns for some reason because really the only 2-turn races she'd run previously were not very good. But anyway, ran around 2 turns last time. I think you can definitely throw out that race. Back at a good distance for her, and I think maybe gets her first win here at Lone Star Park after a couple narrow defeats last season at Lone Star.
This is kind of an odd race. It's not a race that's really in my wheelhouse, even though I do like handicapping sprints, because you've got a lot of 1 for a whiles in here. All we have is a maiden win to show for it. And with Diamonds and Aces and Eagle Express in particular, you got horses who've been racking up some seconds and thirds, but it's taken them a long time to get that elusive second victory. It always worries me when you pick a horse on top and like a horse, and I just decide that I'm just going to go a totally different way, and I didn't take Diamonds and Aces on top, so I'm just not going to include her, figuring if I'm not going to take her on top, why bother? So I'm going with Eagle Express. That always worries me, though. She tried to sprint a couple of times on the turf. They weren't bad, but I think she's a little bit better on the dirt. If you go back a year plus, Steve Asmussen had this filly in the Texas bred stakes, and she was somewhat competitive. And I don't think she's quite that good anymore, but her dirt tries are okay. Clearly she doesn't like the turf at all, 0 for 4. That kind of muddies her record a little bit. So I'm going to take a shot with Eagle Express. Asmussen's been so hot of late. One note we did just get here, they will be opening up the track, meaning it won't be sealed when we start.
Good.
So that's good.
Yeah, it is interesting that our 2 picks have run against each other at least 3, maybe even 4 times, and they've kind of Diamonds and Aces has finished in front of Eagle Express a couple times. Eagle Express in front of Diamonds and Aces back on January 8th. So they're kind of they're not winning, but they're like they got a 2-horse race against each other in some of these races.
Yeah.
Maybe today one of them breaks through.
They're both decent at picking up checks, but they both have piled up rather lengthy non-winning streaks.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. Third race, 7/8 of a mile. Scratch number 2, Texas Gold Rush. These are non-winners of 3 Texas-bred claimers for $15,000.
Yeah, and without knowing, I assume we're probably on the same horse for Jalen Clary, Mr. Nightblinger, who started his career last year as a 3-year-old with 2 really nice wins, a maiden special weight and entry-level allowance win at Lone Star. Then they took on stake rivals. They got, ambitious, and rightfully so when you're running it, in Texas Bred Company. Didn't run so well. Took some time off after a race at Remington. Returned January 20th at Houston. Ran against Gold Pilot, Algebra.
That doesn't get any better than that.
It may have been a stake race, to be honest. And was one pace, finished sixth. Came back March 18th with a really nice race, finishing second at this non-winners at 3 claiming condition. Do note the winners. Daryl's Diablo came back to win, and then almost three-peated yesterday. I picked her yesterday. I think she ran second or third. I think second. But anyway, Daryl's Little Diablo, razor sharp right now. So that's a good second-place finish. Third start after a layoff, going the right direction again. Again, unbeaten at Lone Star Park. Mr. Nightbinger, I think it's the way to go, and proven at 7/8, because a lot of times this is a quirky distance for some horses. It's nice when a horse has proven they can run this distance.
He likes the distance. We know he likes the surface. He certainly did last year. He's going to be tough in here. Fort Hood worries me a little bit. Has never been 7/8, but I don't know if anybody can possibly be in front of Fort Hood. Mm-hmm. It's a long run down the backstretch.
Yep.
We'll see how he takes to that, but he's coming off a reasonably nice win. It doesn't compare Beyer-wise with Mr. Neiblinger's last race,
right.
But Fort Hood's the one that I think could kind of be the danger as I see it.
Yeah, and you're wondering if she'll go this far, or he'll go this far. Usually it has to do with how fast you have to go early.
Yeah.
If he can slow it down, he can probably go that far.
Yeah.
It's like asking someone how much a putt's going to break on the green, and the pros always say, well, how hard are you going to tap it or putt it? So that makes all the difference. And in this case, I think if Fort Hood can slow it down under Elliott, then he has a good chance to win. If not, I think our horse will probably win the race.
On to the fourth. 5/8 on the turf. Texas bred first level allowance fillies and mares which have not won a race other than a maiden claiming starter or trial, or you can get in if you're a non-winner of 2. Scratch the 3 Hawkeye Girl.
Yeah, this is a really good race. I mean, I picked the 7 Mississippi Bling over the this Shack Stateside, who actually finished in front of her last time out. I don't know. The 3-year-old, 5-year-old angle does make a little bit of difference for me, and I'm taking her. She's been consistent 5 times at Lone Star Park in a turf sprint and finished second 3 times. Did win a fast race against Similar at Houston back in late January. I just think this is her distance, even though she doesn't win often. Very consistent. If the pace is slow, obviously she'll ding-dong for the lead, and then if the pace is fast like last time out, finished up pretty nicely out in the middle of the track. So I think I'm going to give her one more chance. I think the money will be spread out in this race pretty much. So 3-1 is, I wouldn't want her at 8-5 or 9-5 because she doesn't win often enough for me. But I think at 3-1, she's a good value play.
Yeah, she's one of those, been around here a long time, always quick, always right up in it early on, if not on the lead. I think when she was really younger, she used to always go to the front, and now, she can be a little more tactical. I did go and take Shack Stateside. I'm just curious how this race is going to shape up. These 5/8 turf races are often like that. They draw a lot of blinding speedsters, and, you just see who gets the best start, who gets into position best. Salt and Lime, though, is one that I really kind of wanted to pick. I actually forgot that we ran those half-mile maiden turf races last year for 2-year-olds. We ran a number of them because Shack Stateside was in one also, and so was Salt and Lime. I'd forgotten that we had done that. And this Salt and Lime did blitz a field first time out. Since then, though, she just has not done much. How about Kendrick Carmouche making an appearance in her past performances on that big stakes day at Sam Houston in late January when they had all those stakes that day? I don't know. Her form is a little off, but maybe she'll wake up getting back on the turf. But I went ahead and took Shack Stateside. I don't know what kind of trip she's going to get. Is Cabrera just going to send her and try to outsprint him? Can he possibly sit and let them go inside of him? I don't know. I don't know if she's got that tool in her
Yeah,
toolbox.
she's never been beat to the lead.
Yeah.
And Salt and Lime, I mean, really, you could say he's never been beat to the lead. I mean, the one race it didn't, something must have happened. I mean, broke bad in the mud, and just that was an abysmal race. But yeah, there's a lot of speed in here, and that doesn't necessarily mean Mississippi Bling's going to get a dream trip. I mean, as far as I know, the jockey may send her for her life also, and
she
and
does
who
have
knows?
speed, but
So this could end up being an interesting race.
Yeah.
Maybe the turn back long shot like G She's Fancy could be the recipient of a really fast pace.
I took her fourth,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, you're exactly right about that. On to the fifth. Scratch number 2, Missin' Curfew, who just ran a couple of really nice races in Hot Springs, but she's going to sit this one out. First level allowance, or he is rather. First level allowance, 3-year-olds and up.
Yeah, and Missin' Curfew, I know you really liked him. He had never faced Olders before, and I thought, well, maybe that will be his undoing today, but we'll have to find out later. The 7, Tapistar, I took this one. Career debut was a really good race, won by, almost 10 lengths at Fairgrounds in a maiden 30. A few horses came out of that race to break their maiden, so, just validating the big figure. Came here to Lone Star Park opening weekend, obviously bet down to 4-5 off that big performance. Didn't break especially well and finished third, a non-threatening third as well. Came back. Had a nice breeze, with Alvarez aboard on May 2nd. Has the benefit of a race over the track. Another thing is, while Jim was in Hot Springs, the Calhoun stable that first weekend or two, I mean, they couldn't find the winner's circle. And then assistant Jay Seaver shows up, and they've been almost impossible to beat the last couple weeks. So, top assistant in town. This horse has had a really nice breeze. I think he's going to revert back to the first race he ran, and if he does that, he'll be tough to beat.
Yeah. If he reverts to that first race, it could be all over. I went ahead and took a little bit of a flyer on Grapnel. Grapnel's 2 for 2 on the mud, although I didn't handicap necessarily assuming that, or 2 for 2 on off tracks. Last time was a really impressive win. He was taking on, non-winners of 3 types. He beat non-winners of 3 in Hot Springs last time. I think he's tactical enough to kind of sit just off of it, and he wins just often enough to get my attention. He's one of these that Asmussen might be able to. I think he might end up being a decent claim for Steve, who took him 3 races back and has already gotten a win out of him. So I'm going to take a shot for him.
And you were in Hot Springs for the last 6 weeks?
Roughly, 2 months.
So you got to see Keith Asmussen, up close and personal. I mean, what's your initial thoughts on him?
He's very good. He won a race here, was it 2 nights ago, rallying. He picked the perfect time, either that or the horse just did it on his own, but I think it was Keith. In between horses, about the 3/8, had him in good position and then timed the move just right. And, Keith's doing a great job. And I don't recall seeing him ride a lot since his very beginning here, 3 years ago, when he was first riding in races. And he really wasn't, other than Superstock, he wasn't getting on his dad's best horses. Now he's riding for a few other trainers. He's riding better horses for his father. And I really enjoy watching him ride because he really does seem to get run out of horses.
Yeah, at first at Oakland, when Moquette, D. Wayne Lucas would use him, I thought, well, maybe they're just, staying friends with Steve, this and that. However, I think he earned their trust because as the meet went on, Keith started getting more and more mounts. He's starting to look good on a horse, and he's finishing, and he's on his way. He's doing really well.
As I think I told Nancy over there, you can tell he's from a family of horsemen, I think. He's very tall, so it's a little different look than the customary height of riders because he is tall. But, you can tell he, I think, comes from a family of horsemen.
Yeah.
On to the 6th. Boy, this is a race where I just wrote, oh, boy, on top of it. 1 mile, $5,000 non-2 lives. I had a hard time coming up with a horse I really could get my arms around in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a race that you probably should have went with a long shot, even though I didn't. I have to admit, I went with what I think is the best horse, which is generally what you want to do. But this horse at Diodoro's a 7, Jim and Jim. The last 2 races have not been good. He did improve first start for Diodoro, but he almost had to off a couple, really poor performances. typical Diodoro works when they start working good, they start running well. I notice it, just watching him over the years. If his horses are working slow, they don't generally or race very well. He's been in Hot Springs where the caliber's really strong. He's had a little time to freshen up. I just feel like his best race is probably going to be good enough. But if you have a better idea, I would, just go for it, because I think the favorites in here are a little bit vulnerable, and I think this is a very competitive race.
Yeah, it's everybody's about the same. I mean, this is really the prototypical one-for race where everybody is one for a whole bunch except Gist and West Texas Bob, and they seem up against it. Everybody else has a maiden win and, a whole bunch of non-wins. I went with One More Baby. He really flopped in his return from a time on the bench since January at this very level. Maybe second off the break for Asmussen. I'm leaning toward Asmussen a lot today, so I hope he has a good day. But I went with a little bit of a price. To me, him and Billy Yank and the top four choices on the line, to me, they all have questions to answer, and the form all looks about the same.
Totally agree.
The difference is Jim and Jim was at least getting beaten double digits at Hot Springs. On to the 7th. Scratch the 1, She's My Broker, and the 3, Mrs. Crinkles. This looks like a real showdown between Red Hot Moon and Skycat. 7.5 on the turf. Optional $10,000 claimer for fillies, or you could start for $5,000 or less in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and the 10 Skycat, I mean, you can't ask for much more than what she's been doing. She's won all 4 of her turf races in 2023, all of them from off of the pace, earning buyer figures that certainly make her the one to beat. The only thing that you could probably look to get her beat was, is there going to be enough speed in the race? And the answer is yes. There's several front runners in here. I really don't see a chink in her armor right now.
No.
A lot of handicappers over the years, and I like data. I don't like to just take people's word for it. They always say, when America's on a hot streak, I mean, they're way more apt to keep it than a Calder gelding. I asked this question to Vic, and he said, I totally agree with that myself, and again, I would like to see proof of that. Okay. However, Skycat is just, like I said, 4 for 4, and I don't see any reason why, if she can hold her form, why she won't run over the top of these again today.
Yeah, I agree. I looked at that race because the PP line looks a little weird. She's 5th, 4 3/4 of a length back, and then 5th, 11 lengths back, and then improves on up and wins. Well, the leader that day, My Golden Bling, just quarter-horsed it, going to the backstretch, opened up this enormous lead, and it skewed the rest of the margin. So she's 11 lengths back, but was holding her position. It's just she had this leader that was off by herself, and that's why that line looks a little odd. But she likes to come from out of it, but at least she's not one of these that's going to be out of the picture.
Right,
and then those I worry about a little bit.
Yep.
Red Hot Moon's really sharp too. But, I'm with Skycat, and it wouldn't shock me if Jay Bird and Calhoun are able to crank another good race out of Red Hot Moon, but I just think Skycat right now is impossible for me to
And
go
she won over a good turf course, which, she gets today.
Yeah, a little bit of moisture out there. 8th race, we are down to just 3 runners. There's win and pick 3 wagering only on the 8th, 6 furlongs. Texas bred maiden claiming fillies. This is our only maiden race on the day today. Scratch the 1, 5, 6, and 7. It's basically a match here between I'm All Shook Up and Bossadusu, and I see that we are on different fillies in this one.
Yeah, 8 to 5, 7 to 5, which means I couldn't split them. I have trouble splitting them now. Here's the deal. They're the same filly, except one has early speed, All Shook Up, and the other one has the benefit of a race over the track and a good one, a second place finish behind Diamond Grand. So, again, I don't think we need to spend much time on this race. Either go for the speed horse in the 3 or go for the horse with a race over the track, because on numbers, they're the same filly.
Yeah, and at this time of the year, I'm not paying that much attention to the 3-year-old, 4-year-old angle. If I like the 3-year-old, I take her.
Sure.
The only reason I leaned a little toward the 3 is just that I think she's going to be in front of the 4. So in a match race situation, let the 4 try to catch her. That being said, I'm All Shook Up has never necessarily been a tiger on the back end of races, and probably would be better at 5/8,
Right.
or 5.5 even. So I went ahead and shook him up and came up with I'm All Shook Up just because she does have speed. But yeah, you present it properly. Good race over the track. And maybe a little more fondness for the 6 furlongs, too, than I'm All Shook Up.
Yeah,
but I wound up with the 3.
All Shook Up, though, I mean, could be on a 6-8 length early lead, I mean, if they so choose.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a coin toss.
Yeah, that's, interesting match race. We had that great match race, not to slight the first-time starter in there, but last year, we had Algebra and Texas Mr. Moneybags, was it?
That sounds right.
And that really, really good Texas Spread Sprinter, and they put on a great match.
Yeah.
Algebra beat them that day. So sometimes those races can be interesting from a win betting standpoint. 9th race. $5,000 claiming fillies. Non-winners of 3 life. Scratch one of the favorites on the line. Number 4, Jan's Turn to Win.
Yeah, think it as a donation, even money. Here's a filly that's our mare that's been 10-1, 11-1, and 10-1, and I'm sure the mare's like, why am I even money? I never take money. However, at the same condition, the only time been at this condition was 3-5, and was narrowly beaten. Extremely consistent, running against better than these. The distance of 5/8 will be fine because there's always a lot of speed in these races, and she's got enough to be in a perfect position. I know she's 2 for 21. I get that. That's why I think some people will want to go somewhere else. But I think she's got too much talent, and I'm willing to take even money.
Yeah, me too. I couldn't pass her up. One thing I'll note about Crystal Crescent, that May 2nd race at Oaklawn, that was the very first race I called there when I started that 2-month stint. I like Backbeat that day, but Crystal Crescent ran a nice second that day and then came back and won. So for a bottom-level type race in Hot Springs, that wound up being kind of productive. Then this mare really went off the kind of the deep end, so to speak. Maybe she wakes up a little bit. Michael Hewitt did finish Hot Springs meet pretty sharp, and he already has a win here this week. So maybe Crystal Crescent might be able to warm her up, but it looks like it's all thinking as a donations to. It's her race, basically.
Yep.
On to the 10th. Super High Five. Got a nice carryover of $60-something $100. I didn't write it down before I came up here, but it's pretty good. Maybe we'll put it up on the screen. It will be up on the screen at some point. But the Super High Five has a building carryover. $10,000 optional claimer. Starter allowance for $5,000. Going an interesting distance. A mile and 1 furlong on the turf. Scratch the 8 Wits Taquito.
Yeah, Wits Taquito is one of my best long shot plays of the day, so I'm a little disappointed. I ended up on the gelding that I knew was strictly the one to beat in here. I mean, Doc Irwin has won 2 of 6 on turf, 4 of 6 in the money. The buyer figures he's been earning at a higher claiming price, our best in this field. Has won at Remington. He's won at Louisiana Downs. And, again, throughout the last race on the main track, his previous 2 in the money finishes at Houston were against, a lot better than these. Englander, Exeter, I mean, those are better horses than today. A very good finishing punch if the pace is fast enough. But, again, he won at Remington, Louisiana Downs behind moderate paces, and he was close. So Doc Irwin's the one to beat.
Yeah, I think so, too. But I did go with Guitar Slim in here. Off the bench for George Bryant. Has a really nice 5/8 mile work on May 5th to get ready for this. His main track numbers are great, 8 for 19. But, he does show a win just last fall on the turf at Louisiana Downs for what that's worth. And he did get very sharp at Delta over the winter. He's had some time off now. I'm just going to give him a little bit of a shot over Doc Irwin, who admittedly seems to have every opportunity to win this race. But I kind of coin flipped this one a little bit and went 9-6 instead. Usually when I go against Broberg in a race like this, I pay for it. But
Guitar Slim, what a great claim. I mean, he was claimed for $7,500 at Evangeline, and then for $12,000, and since then he's won. I mean, he won $91,000 last year. So what a great claim, Guitar Slim, and he loves to win races. So I mean, you could very well be on the right horse because he certainly got better speed than Doc Irwin.
Yeah, and he even did compete relatively well in those Louisiana-bred stakes.
Right,
So,
he did.
That's there's something to that as well. I mean, Doc Irwin's been running against Open Company. Hey, how about that? An Arkansas bred, too.
Yeah.
We could wrap up the card with an Arkansas bred and a Louisiana bred exacta.
Yeah, well, that one doesn't have much of a chance on turf up in Hot Springs, unfortunately, for the connections. They just have to settle for winning here and in Louisiana, which is good enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, that will do it. A happy Mother's Day to all that it applies. I know you're going to celebrate Mother's Day as soon as we're done here. So, have a nice dinner today. The weather should hold out enough for you to cook outside, shouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. It'll be a brilliant day for everybody.
And definitely thanks for joining us. Good crowd filing in. And for Rick Lee, I'm Jim Byers. Good luck on your Sunday. We'll have the anthem and the changes coming up shortly.